Howie Long, the Raiders Hall of Famer, joining us on the show. Howie, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Dan. I'm looking at the mountains up here in Montana, getting ready to wrap it up and head back to Virginia.
Do you get recognized in Montana?
It depends. The nice thing about Montana is not a lot of people here.
Who do they root for? Are they Viking fans in Montana?
A lot of Seahawk fans.
Seahawk fans.
Yeah, a lot of Seahawk fans here, and that's I would say that's convenient geography.
We were talking about this with your allegiance to a team, and you buy into a team, and at one point you have to say to yourself, I don't agree with what the Ravens did or the Vikings are doing or Carolina does. And does an owner have to placate his local fan base, or does he worry about the national media here? Because these owners are making decisions for the local fans.
Well, I think it's a combination of both. I think one is the national fan base, which the NFL, one of the reasons why the NFL is so successful is because they pretty much run on a unified front. Everything is divided 1/32. Decisions are made as a group. Roger is the advocate for the league and the 32 owners. But, the bottom line always impacts business. The non-shared revenue are local advertising dollars, luxury suites, and on a national level for the NFL, advertising dollars.
Would you play
that impacts it, and it makes all of these questions that you have on a local level with a team and on a national level with the league very difficult to deal with.
Would you play Adrian Peterson right now?
Dan, to me, it's really simple. And I take Adrian Peterson out of the equation. And I think it's important to do that. It's the faceless individual who's being accused of, crime A or whatever. I just think we're going down a really slippery slope when we pick and choose where to apply due process. I think it's one of the things that makes our country so great. Do I have questions regarding the decisions that certain district attorneys make when I'm looking at things that are being presented on, whether it's online or TMZ or whatever? It's startling. It's sad in my mind, and particularly in our house when we sit and talk about it. But I think due process is extremely important. And now you have to be consistent with due process. It can't be. It's the old Jimmy Johnson. If I'm in a team meeting, and Troy Aikman falls asleep, I wake him up and I get him a cup of coffee. If player B, who's a special teams player, falls asleep, I wake him up and I cut his ass.
Yeah. But that's what we're doing with Adrian Peterson. We're looking at him differently because he's Adrian Peterson. He's not expendable for the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's if you look at each team's individual history and you say, how did you handle situations in the past? If there's an inconsistency, if they're cutting a player who's not anywhere as significant before he gets due process, then I totally disagree with the team. But I err on the side of due process.
Yeah, but I'm going to keep you on the roster and pay you, but let me do my investigation. Let me find out if there's more to this, because the Vikings are going to look even worse if more comes out here. So you say to Adrian Peterson, you know what? Let's not make it about football right now. Make it about...
Yeah, you're taking you know what you're doing, Dan? You're taking the corporate model, which I understand. If we were in a regular, functioning business...
But this is a business. These are corporations.
I understand, Dan, we're talking about a calendar... We're talking about within a calendar year. Your example is... Your model is pretty much where if you were... an employee at ESPN, would they be handling someone in research the same way they're handling you
No.
at your company?
No, but they've even admitted that they have different rules for different people, but they try to treat everybody fairly, and that just came out recently at ESPN.
And I think you have to. I really believe that, Dan. It's like free speech and due process. Those kinds of things are easy when it's comfortable. It's when it's uncomfortable that it becomes difficult. And, you can talk about where someone was brought up, what their background is, and, what their frame of reference is. And, I think Charles had said something about cultural issues.
Yeah, but that's not true. I grew up in the Midwest. I faced the same kind of, with a switch or a belt.
Right.
So that.
Well, I guess my point was this, and I'm not arguing, what part of the country someone grows up in. When something's right or when something's wrong, to me, there's not a lot of gray. And the best thing that I can do with my sons, and you can do with your kids, is lead by example, one, and try to make it clear that, this is right, this is wrong, and the grays get kind of eliminated for the most part. And as I mentioned, regardless of where you grew up, at times things are going to pop up. For example, when I was a kid growing up, we had the busing riots, desegregation. I was right in the middle of it in Charlestown. And, people would say, well, that's the way it's been around here. You live there, I live here, and neither the twain shall meet. It was wrong. And you can cling to that, but at the end of the day, it's wrong. And regardless of where you are in the country or what the norm is, you just have to change.
He's Howie Long, the Raiders Hall of Famer, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. There's no way that the Raiders could have collected the personalities they did back in the 70s and 80s. You couldn't do that now.
Not that locker room I walked into. It was like the Star Wars bar.
Did you ever, because you can't really prepare going into that locker room with the different characters you had there, that you didn't know what it was going to be this day, but you knew it was going to be something on this day?
Well, and I don't know that a Villanova program where you bust every game and there's a priest on every floor necessarily prepares you for the Oakland Raider locker room. I don't think that does, Dad. I'm not sure if there is a preparatory school for that.
Who scared you on the Raiders?
Golly. I would say there were guys who were, you'd never think of. I mean, there were guys who were volatile, who were unpredictable, that you were aware of, I would say would be the operative word. I'm aware of. My radar's up. It's like when I go into a room, any athlete goes into a room, you size the room up. You go into your room, who's the threat? I'm still not sure.
Who were you aware of on the Raiders?
I was aware of John Matuzak. I was aware of Lyle Alzado. And, your fingers on the button. You have to be ready. And that's just the reality of that culture and that business. It's changed now significantly for the better. But at the end of the day, that's always, to me, a thing that athletes do. You walk in a room, you size your room up.
Can we write
there was a guy that never said a word, who was quiet, special teams guy, Cleo Montgomery.
And?
One of the toughest people in the room. I saw him stuff people in their locker. I saw him drop a guy on an airplane flight. And he never started a fight.
He ended him.
Oh. Matter of fact, I think his son is playing at Stanford now.
You got to write a book.
Wilbur Montgomery's brother.
We got to write a book. So when you're gone, then
that book.
No, we put it out after. We put it out after the fact.
That book can never be written, Dan. That's the way it is, Dan. It can never be
We
written.
put it in a safety deposit box, Howie.
and Geraldo will be trying to get into
Tell the boys at Fox I said hello. Always great to talk to you. Hopefully next time we'll be just talking some football.
I know. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of it.
Yeah, it's tough. But you know what? I'm accused of putting my head in the sand or being a mouthpiece for the NFL if I don't talk about it. So,
no, and you know what, Dan? It's okay. I mean, I believe in what the NFL tries to do. At times, I disagree with the implementation or the decisions that are made. But I think if you want credibility, you have to be consistent. And as I mentioned, due process, freedom of speech, those things are easy to adhere to when it's convenient.
Yep.
It's when it's difficult that it's the hardest.
Talk to you soon, Howie. Thank you, buddy.
All right, partner.